Welcome to this episode of the Duke Football Talk Section 17 podcast, brought to you by Comfort Mechanical Contractors, Durham's premier commercial HVAC installation and service company. For more information, go to comfortmc.com or call 919 383 2502. I'm your host, Brian Kennedy, and as you can tell, my voice is about gone. I'm going to try to get through this. I've also got my co host, as always, Jamie Holt, Scott Medlin, and as you can tell, we're missing Josh, guys. I think the game just got to him. He went into the woods. He is yet to come back out. We can't reach him by phone. So we had to call in a Hail Mary. We had to go to the bullpen. We had to bring back one Jordan Mann of the Big J and Little J podcast. So we're thankful that Jordan on last minute could come on and join with us. We've got a lot to break down. Yes, we know there is a Virginia game upcoming this weekend, but there's a bigger elephant in the room, and that is the UNC game that happened this past Saturday night. But as always, before we give our thoughts, let's hear from the man himself. Here's head coach Mike Elko post game.
First off, hats off to those guys. That's what rivalries are. That's what rivalries are about, and certainly have to give those guys credit for the plays that we made. Extremely proud of my team. Proud of how we fought. Proud of how we competed. Proud of how we battled. Proud of how we rallied in the fourth quarter. This one stings. We knew they were a really talented team. We knew we were going to have to just scratch and claw our way to stay in it and hang in it and hopefully give us a chance in the fourth quarter. And, I thought we did that. And, we just couldn't, 2 years in a row, we just couldn't stop that kid with the game on the line. He's an extremely talented kid. He's unbelievably competitive. And, sometimes he just wills that team to win. And he certainly did it again tonight. And so it's kind of my statement.
And again, that was head coach Mike Elko giving his thoughts after a heartbreaking loss to the UNC Tar Heels 47-45. This was one that should have been won by the darker blue team. Let's just go ahead and say it. But for the second year in a row, somehow, some way, Drake May and the boys were able to keep the bell. So, guys, let's dive into it. We've got a heavy mailbag. I mean, Santa bag edition coming up shortly. And I'm sure there's a lot of UNC questions. But let's just get initial reactions to the game themselves. Jamie and I were actually at the game as well as Josh. But, again, he's not here. He's hiding somewhere in the woods. Jordan, Scott, you got to see the game on TV from a different perspective. So, Scott, why don't you go ahead and go first? Give us your thoughts of the game this past Saturday night.
Well, I texted the guys multiple times in the second half. Duke needed just one stop, just one, and we could not find that stop. Let's be honest. I mean, I trash them because I can't stand them. Drake May is unbelievable. The guy is pulling, everything out of his backside, making perfect plays. I mean, he's making pitches to running backs that aren't even paying attention and getting 30 yards. He's getting demolished by somebody throwing perfect passes. Granted, there were guys 23 yards down the line of scrimmage, passed it in the end zone, hiding under the R of Carolina, which, by the way, for the record, Mo McIntyre got called for the same thing in the state game, standing on the line of scrimmage. So just want to, point that out there to everybody. But in all honesty, I mean, Carolina played just a tiny bit better at times. I would have loved to have seen Duke, and I know we're not playing the what if game and all this other stuff. I would have loved to have seen Riley Leonard there. Duke would have run up and down the field against that team and made them look bad. And the fact that they rushed the field after almost getting their butts handed to them by a third string quarterback who, if y'all haven't figured out yet, is a pretty doggone good quarterback. I mean, my man Grayson is starting to ball out, and finally they're let him do it. My man had a great game. Jordan Moore had a great game. Defense played their butts off. They did a lot of things. They did about everything they could. I've saw things I've never seen before. I'm still trying to figure out how grabbing the side of shoulder pads is a face mask. I'm still trying to figure out how a guy jumps between four people. Guy on the bottom ends up with the football, and the guy that's on the very top with his hands like this gets called for the catch. And then as many times as they showed Elko on the sideline looking like, what in the devil is going on? He should have been in my house because I was making the same gestures, yelling, screaming, hollering. My wife finally looked at me and she said, "You know they can't hear you." I said, "Well, they ain't listening to him either. So, I mean, why not let me yell?" But all in all, I mean, Duke played a great game. They needed the one stop. They didn't get it. Carolina managed to pull the golden horseshoe out of their butthole like they do every freaking time because that's what they are. They're just the luckiest, stupid pieces of crap you've ever seen in your life. They live under some kind of cherry tree where money falls out of it instead of cherries. They're just so freaking lucky. So hopefully this weekend when they go down to Death Valley, Dabo lays a behind whooping on them and says compliments of Coach Mike Elko.
Jordan, obviously you weren't expecting to be on the episode tonight, so um, just give us your initial thoughts. You weren't at the game either. You had to watch it from the comfort of your own home. So overall thoughts with this past Saturday's game.
I mean, it's a tough follow with Scott. That's for sure. I mean, the big dog got loose right there. But I tend to agree with Scott. It was uh I might be diagnosed with bipolar syndrome after that game of just how happy I got and then how quickly sad I became and then how happy I got and how sad I became. And it, like Scott said, one stop and you never want to. It's a chicken's way out. It's always a not the best excuse. It's like, well, the officiating won you the game, but I can point to 7 or 8 calls that like I tweeted the 3 plays that got some recognition on Twitter, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like there's one of the biggest plays of the game I talked about on the Big J and Lil J show that is not talked about enough is Brandon Johnson got called for pass interference after Duke went up 40 seconds left. That ball was not catchable. That ball was 5 yards to the right and 5 yards too high, and the guy flopped in midair and got 15 yards. That was such a bad call and such a big moment of the game because there's 40 seconds left. That play happened, 35 seconds left. You give them 15 yards. They should have been at the 25 the whole time. Instead, that gave them turned out to be game time field goal position later on. So just very frustrating because back-to-back years felt like we're on the bad side of bad calls. And yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, piggybacking off what Scott said about just talking about Drake May, first of all, we were actually talking about this, me, Brian, and Josh, and thinking that maybe Drake May might be one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen play live. Which I think it is. I'm thinking back. I saw Philip Rivers play in Wallace Wade, and then we went down to the Chick-fil-A Bowl and saw Johnny Manziel. Obviously, his pro career didn't turn out very well, but Johnny Manziel was a great college quarterback. But other than that, I can't think of anybody else. And Drake May might be even better than Johnny Football as far as college QB. So
Andrew Luck, were you at the Stanford game?
yeah, I saw Andrew Luck at the Stanford game when they just beat the brakes off of us. So
And were you at Jameis AC Championship game? Jameis Winston?
I did not go to that game, so I didn't see that one. But yeah, so Drake May is up there with some of the great quarterbacks I've seen play against Duke, but we had them and let them off the hook. When we scored and went up, and there was 41 seconds left, I was jumping up and down and screaming just like everybody else. But then I'm like, there's 41 seconds left, and they got timeouts, and I'm like, this is not over. We needed the one stop, and I know Jordan mentioned the Brandon Johnson faux pass interference, which is those refs were just freaking awful. And speaking of Grayson Loftus, man, he was awesome. I tried to tweet some in Keenan, but Keenan has zero Wi-Fi, so like it's a trash stadium. But one of the tweets I did get out was all caps, and I put, "That's a true freshman QB." Like, I mean, he was just making plays. He can make all the throws, and I'd like to actually see Duke. And we're going to talk about this some too because we got some questions about Grayson Loftus in the mailbag. But I'd like to see Duke kind of loosen the leash on him a little bit because I feel like they still had him leashed up, and then they loosened it a little bit in the second half, and my man made all the throws, like just great throws. And man, Jordan Moore, what a game. What a game from Jordan Moore. He shows the capability to me of playing on Sundays eventually. It was a disappointing end. I thought we had it. I thought we had it, and we're gonna get into a lot of stuff on the mailbag, but I was just disappointed, and we walked out dejected. Didn't want to see that bell getting rung or anything like that. The students rushing the field and all that mess. It was just terrible.
Yeah, I mean, this one went into my top 5 most disappointing outcomes for a Duke UNC game. It's up there along the lines of the 94 overtime loss, the inflatable helmet being destroyed by the UNC team in 2002 after the last second field goal, and of course the jump pass game back in 2019, and then last year's game. But we won't go down the bad memory lane. I will say, I know we've talked about the negatives, couple of the positives that we saw, things that we had not seen yet out of the Mike Elko era. How about that fake punt, guys, by Porter Wilson? Amazing. No one expected that to happen because Duke was basically on their own 25, 27, something like that. And then they made that call, first down Duke. The other thing, and by the way, the guys will attest, I called this 30 seconds before it happened, the onside kick to start the second half. I had just said, wouldn't it be something if Duke just came out and onside kicked the ball just to show them that they mean business? And what happens? Onside kick to perfection. Don't think we got any points out of it, but it was good to see that all bets were off, and Duke knew they had to do anything and everything to beat this team. Now, you said Drake May, aka the white Patrick Mahomes. There were some passes that May threw that any other quarterback in the ACC, it would have been either picked off or nowhere near the receiver that it was intended for. So you got to give credit where credit's due. Drake May, he is going to be playing on Sundays for a long, long time. Well, unless he goes to the Panthers, but we won't talk about that. Sorry, Jamie. Omarion Hampton, 5th straight game over 100 yards rushing. That guy, I don't want to see him next year, but he's going to be back in Wallace Wade when UNC comes for the battle for the victory bell. Tez Walker, again, everything we thought he was coming in from Kent State. There were Duke fans vouching, begging, pleading, let him in, let him be reinstated based off the whole situation. Now I think we're all regretting that based off of what happened. There was no one that could stop Tez Walker. And that's not a knock on our guys. He is just that elite of a wide receiver. He's going to be playing on Sundays as well. So one unsung hero that no one's talked about for that UNC team, Noah Burnett, the kicker. 6 field goals made, 6 of 6. He misses one of those, Duke's taking home the victory bell. 3 for 3 on extra points. He scored a crap ton of points for UNC on Saturday night. He was the real MVP of that game. But hey, back to the real blue, the dark blue. You know, it is what it is. I didn't really get that upset with the officials because we were talking about this before we hit the record button. This has been going on all year long with these officials, not just at Duke games. Like games every weekend, there is a team that gets subsequently, I think that's the word, screwed by the ACC officials. I've never seen a business establishment have employees screw up more and more and more, and there be no repercussions or no changes or no actions. So, ACC, if you somehow get this episode, you've got to do something in the offseason. This isn't going to continue. It can't continue because you are making this conference look like an embarrassment to everyone else. Why do you think teams want to leave? Just throwing that out there. On a positive note of what came out for Duke, and I'll open it back up to you guys. Sorry, I'm going to get on my soapbox really quick. Jordan Waters, guys, is 3 rushing touchdowns away from breaking the single season record for rushing touchdowns. Steak dinners all around. He's got 12. He's actually tied right now with Mike Dunn and good old Robert Baldwin from the 94 team. Love Robert Baldwin. Todd Polino. I was hoping Josh was going to be on here tonight, but again, he's searching for himself in the woods. Todd went 5 for 5. He has made 56 straight point attempts. Pretty impressive. Y'all want to guess who's first in point attempts made consecutively? Someone, y'all can unmute.
Let me go Will Snyder-Wine.
You were incorrect, sir, but that was a great guess.
I had to go off the wall.
Scott?
Oh, I see his face. I just can't think of his name. The guy that should have been kicking in the NFL that never made it.
Ross Martin.
Ross
That's
Martin.
that's who I was going to say. Yeah.
That is correct. Do y'all want to guess how many point attempts he made consecutively for a Duke record? Polino's at 56.
75.
Jamie?
I'll go one over. No, I'm going to do the prices right. Go one over Scott. I'll go. I don't know. 82.
Try 152 straight point attempts made.
Wow.
That's crazy.
So Todd
would be him, but I was like Will Snyder-Wine off the wall. But
well, yeah, it's not. Yeah, exactly. So Todd, if you're watching or listening to this episode, buddy, if you've got a COVID year you can get from someone, get it, because you're gonna have to be in college a while to break that record. But again, Todd Polino, you guys mentioned Grayson. Great performance for him. We're gonna need the same of that as we head into Virginia this weekend. But hey, we came up short. Plain and simple. It sucks. Nothing we can do about it but look ahead. And we will look ahead later in the episode, but we've got to get to Santa's mailbag because, folks, we asked for your questions, and boy, did they come in. Jamie spent, I believe, about 3 hours. Scott, you want to say one more thing? I'm sorry.
Quick question to the two of you that were there, because I know Jordan saw this at home.
Okay. Yep.
When Burnett kicked the field goal at the very end, could you guys tell that it was wide right and then blew back left?
Josh was under the goalpost that he kicked at.
Okay.
He said there was never doubt. He said even though it looked like it,
I
I know.
Yeah, on
'Cause
TV.
Yeah.
From my angle, it looked funny, but like I couldn't tell because from section 100 we were like, what were we in, Brian? Kind of in the corner of the end zone.
Yeah, caddy cornered.
That
So
that
was
was
kinda
where
see it.
you guys were was not the greatest of angles, but yeah. And I was going one more point you made, Brian.
Yeah.
Terry Moore is a juke away from being -6 yards on that pass. He juked the defender. The defender went over to Pudding Cup on the sideline, who had been way past his bedtime eating another Pudding Cup, and got the first down. Because if he had not juked that guy, he would have got taken to the ground and been 6 yards short.
And Brian, real quick, before we go to mailbags, I think I have to correct you on the onside kick. We were down 12. We scored to cut it to 5. Onside kick, got it, scored again to go up. I'm pretty sure that's how that happened.
Okay.
I think that happened.
Okay. Well, thank you for correcting me, because if not, Regina Lee would have had
That's
me.
exactly who I thought about when you said it. I was like, let me just go out of my way and save Regina at the time.
Regina, I love you. You keep me honest. So if I mess up, I look forward to you saying you were wrong, Brian, and here's why.
All I remember was for the onside kick was another spot where one of my tweets finally went out. So I used the major league GIF or whatever. So
yeah, North Carolina, you gotta put some TVs at the concession stand, get some Wi-Fi. I mean, my God. Anyway, all right. So enough of our reactions. Well, for right now, we're gonna move on to the Santa size mailbag. Again, it took Jamie about 2.5 hours to condense everyone's questions.
it was something. I mean, we had some comments like
yeah. We're recording this on a Monday night, so Jamie, let's go ahead and get rolling because I really don't feel like being up till midnight.
All right, I'm gonna start with Facebook, and I'm coming in with Ben Pye. I'm sure they tried their best. Talking about the refs, we're going right back to the refs here. Sure, I'm sure they tried their best to make the right calls. It's just coincidence that the biggest decisions all went one way, right? Again, it can't be any other reason but chance, right? So I thought that was a funny question, but Carolina seems to get those calls, and it happened last year, and it happened again this year.
I will say this much, and again, not trying to be Debbie Downer. That was a fumble, not a pass that got knocked down by Grayson in the first half. That was clearly a fumble. But that's the only call that was correctly made that they reviewed and everything in Duke's favor.
Yeah, by the way, that interception was an interception. Josh and I were like 5 feet away. We saw it clear as day. Anyway, I'm sure that's a question too. Sorry. Go ahead, Jamie.
Oh yeah, we got a question about reviews and all sorts of stuff. Pradeep, is coming in. Is if we can all agree that this was terrible officiating, which I'm pretty sure everybody that's a Duke fan agrees there. He said just short of the abomination that was versus Miami years ago. How much of the officiating do you attribute to home field pressure, like basically being some home cooking on the refs, versus the idea that they might just get paid more when the bigger schools win? And I mean, looking at it, there's always a little bit of home cooking, right? We see it in Cameron. We can't say there's not. We see it in Cameron Indoor Stadium. At least under K.
Not Friday night.
Yeah, at least under K. Shire is not. He's not gotten to the point where
He's got to build that reputation up.
He's got. I think he's got to win a national title before he gets those calls. But yeah, I mean, we used to see it. And I mean, even like back in the day, back in another basketball analogy, back in the day, K attacked Dean for getting all the calls. But we're back to football. And last year, once again, to me, that was the most egregious call last year in Wallace Wade, because we were going to go up 10
Yep.
with like 2 minutes to play. I mean, the game was basically over,
Something like that.
and I think Carolina was like either out of timeouts or they had one timeout. So to me that was the most egregious when they took the touchdown away there at the end to put us up 10.
Yeah, I mean, with the way that some of these UNC fans treated the Duke fans after the game, gosh, I'm starting to wonder if the refs realized if they had called that game for Duke, they might have been crucified before they got off the field. I mean, again, I'm not generalizing all UNC fans as that type of fan, but I will say with where the majority of the parents and the Duke fans were sitting, they were not treated exactly the best. Now, there's Duke fans exactly the same way. I understand. I get that. But again, it makes you wonder when these refs are huddling together after a certain call is made. They're like, all right, if we don't do this, then this is probably going to happen. Or if we make this call, then, we can at least get the crowd on our side. I mean, I'm not saying that, but it just seemed like from what Pradeep was saying, it's like, come on, guys. Some of these calls that might have been a 50-50 toss-up where, you just play, nope, this is what it is. We're going to keep moving. So, and it wasn't just that. I think it was the review staff back in Charlotte, too. There were some that didn't even get reviewed that
Right.
people were like, wait a second, you reviewed X, but now you're not reviewing Y. What's your process to determining what a review is? So, I don't know.
In theory, though, in all honesty, if you look at the groups that come through, Flanagan and his staff were supposed to be one of the best, quote unquote, as the ACC lines down to where you get the Riley Johnson and Jerry Magalese and I'm blind, I'm deaf, I want to be a ref in their groups. So the rest of them, I mean, he's supposed to be one of the best, but obviously they were not on their game.
Is Ron Cherry still retired? Can we get him to come back?
No, but the Duke was definitely getting the business that night.
They were, and to go off of that point, like what's frustrating about that game was Drake May was unstoppable. Like him and Taz were a special connection. Drake was on, and then every time there was an incompletion, there's a flag because it's almost like the refs were expecting a completion, and that's the frustrating part of things. Like he's a talent. He should go 1-1 in the draft. Stop giving him every advantage there is because of some physicality. And Connor, my co-host, broke this news to me today in our recording that the ACC has a new head of officials, and the number one thing they had coming in this year was more physicality for defense, so less PIs. Duke got every PI call there was in Chapel Hill, and to go off of that question, you hear the groans of the crowd and you hear the UNC sideline, you're going to throw the flag because you just feel the pressure to, because you think you missed the call. And there was a couple times where Brandon Johnson and Chandler Rivers had their hands up like, what did we do? And that dictates the call right there of UNC's home crowd playing into it and the sideline begging for the whistle, and they got all the whistles.
And it's frustrating because you look at it like Mac Brown is likely going to get those calls, just like down at Alabama, Nick Saban is going to get those calls. And just right now, year 2, Mike Elko is just not getting those calls, and it's really frustrating. All right.
Max won 13 straight against Duke, by the way.
Yes.
That was a stat that surprised me a lot.
And they mentioned it 1,001 freaking times on TV.
Well, when Mac was at UNC the first time, we were bad, like for most of his tenure. George Bunn on Facebook. He says he has a discussion topic he wanted us to discuss. At the end of both UNC and Notre Dame games, the defense has gone to rush 2 or 3 and drop 8 or 9, and it has cost Duke the game. Thoughts on this strategy? And it's one of those things like against UNC, you want to have everybody back. You want to stop Tez Walker from getting that big play, but you also want to get to Drake May. So it's like, what do you do in that situation?
So I'll go first. Elko runs cover 8. So it's not just in the big like people are starting to see that Duke rushes 3 and thinks they just rush 3 and play prevent defense and into games. They don't. It's a type of defense. They don't play prevent. They play like the sidelines in the middle and stuff. You just can't see it from the TV perspective. And there was my case in point when Trey Freeman, when Duke played at NC State and he had that interception, Duke rushed 3 and confused MJ Morris with the coverage. They throw it right to Trey Freeman. Duke had it in the red zone because of that. That's just the go-to set that Elko runs with his 3 down linemen. And I mean, we got to Drake May as much as we could. And go off your point real quick. Like if we do get out of that, then Drake May was just like, all right, there's Tez Walker. Here goes a 47-yard bomb. Have at it. So it's just kind of if you do it, you're screwed. If you don't, you're screwed.
Right. If you bring a blitz there, I mean, and you don't get to Drake May, then next thing you know, it's a Tez Walker touchdown. Did you have something, Scott?
No, I was just saying it's essentially kind of what we discussed last week on the Durham Devils Club with Tyler Santucci about. He kind of hit the same thing talking about it, and we did mention the play from Notre Dame, but his philosophy, the things that he mentioned, is how they run things and do stuff there. So just a perfect segue for that.
That is a great segue, Scott. And if you want to be a part of future podcasts where you could be a part of the interviews, go to DurhamDevilsClub.com. We had the Trinity Club members and above join us for the interview with Tyler Santucci. It came out, I believe, late last week.
Friday or
So
Saturday, yeah.
yeah. So all the members who are Trinity or everyone gets to listen to it. But if you want to be a part of the Durham Devils Club, the money goes directly to the players to help them out in day-to-day funds needs. You can also look at online, get a hat like this one I'm rocking right there. Pretty cool hat. If you want more information, go to DurhamDevilsClub.com.
And one more point after the Durham Devils Club advertisement. One more point about Santucci. When we were on that interview, he even mentioned something similar to what we just said about, if you blitz and you let Tez Walker run loose against Notre Dame, it was the I can't remember his name, but it was the big tight end that was killing us. Like, so if you blitz and you don't get to Hartman, the next thing you know, he hits that tight end over the middle for 18 yards or whatever, and it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't basic situation. So, all right, Bentley Weeks. Are y'all fed up enough to leave the ACC yet? Are we ready to ship out to the Big Ten or something like that?
If it was only Duke getting these screwed up calls, I'd have my bags packed and ready to go. But this is a more, I think, official problem than it is just them focusing on one team and basically giving them the finger. I don't know. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of unsatisfied customers when they send out a survey to the coaches at the end of the year, if we're being completely honest. I don't even want to think about leaving the ACC. We just got the new scheduling format set for the next, 7 years? I'm sure after year 4, it'll get changed again. Yes, fingers crossed. But no, let's give it another year or two. Let's see if UNC comes back in to Wallace Wade next year and there's more screwed up calls, then okay, I might rethink my position. But no, I'm going to stay put, at least me personally.
I personally would rather have sunnier and more 70s than cold, blistery snow and teens. So I'd rather go west or south. Heck no to the Big Ten.
So,
And
the Pac-2.
I will say there is a possibility too that, there's a real possibility if Duke gets whoever comes back at quarterback and we get some decent transfers, we could challenge for the ACC next year. Because Florida State's going to lose Jordan Travis, Carolina's losing Drake May. I mean, it's going to be kind of wide open next year, in my opinion.
And they just came out with how they're going to do the 12-team playoff.
Mhm.
What was it? 6 of them are the conference champions,
Mhm.
and then the other 6 are the highest ranked teams after that. So yeah, Duke could have a potential way in, whether it be winning the ACC title or they have a good enough season and they're ranked high enough, they could be in that as well.
Yeah, I would like to see Puddin' Cup next year without Drake May at quarterback in Durham. That's where I want to go with that.
May did not do senior day, leaving it open. He
Nah.
could come back to Chapel
Yeah,
Hill.
it's not. That's not
I
happening.
will pack his bags personally for him to get out of Chapel Hill. I never
would-
want to see him again.
I would be absolutely shocked if he came back. Like,
The,
there's no chance.
the Chicago Bears need him.
Yeah. All right, our next question comes from Josh Smith, who's one of the guys on the Devil's Den podcast. He wants a minimum of 30 minutes, clearly defining a legal catch. He says, "Talk about it like I'm 5 and I've never seen one before." We'll let you take this, Brian, because I'm pretty sure he's talking about the catch / interception or whatever it may have been. You and Josh were right there.
Yeah, so listen, I'm not a rules official. I don't read the rule books. I bend the rules more than I follow them. Guys will tell you that. From what we saw, the ball was thrown. I cannot remember the receiver. I know it wasn't Tez, because if it was
Nesbitt. The
Nesbitt,
other
thank
thorn
you.
in our freaking flesh.
Yes, Nesbitt. Nesbitt went up. There were 3, I felt like it was 3 Duke defenders around him. He was coming down, bobbling the ball. And then y'all help me, because again, it was so fast. Who was it that grabbed the ball?
Chandler originally grabbed the ball.
And Josh
Okay.
Pickett was there too.
Yeah,
Okay.
Pickett was the guy that ended up with it on the ground, I think.
So my understanding is, as soon as a part of your body touches the ground, if you have possession, that's the play. You're done. Stop play where it's marked. He was bobbling the ball. Chandler and Pickett were both – the ball was loose. And as he was hitting, the ball was going into Pickett's arms. They both fell. Pickett comes out of it. I mean, they were fighting for it, obviously, because Nesbitt realized he was going to lose the football. When a defensive player comes up with the football, like, no question, it should have been an interception. By the way, if you're a UNC fan and you're watching this episode by chance, let me tell you, every UNC fan I've interacted with since that game has said the exact same thing. That was an interception, no doubt.
Yeah, and if you watch the replay, Nesbitt's never touched the ground. So, I mean, what's a catch and what's not a catch, and it's just unreal.
Some people were trying to justify his tush is what touched first, and that should have stopped the play. But he didn't have possession. He did not have possession of the ball, so it was a live ball. I don't know. I'm getting riled up. I'll stop. I'll let Jordan talk.
No, to go off that point, what's the most frustrating part is they spent 2 minutes reviewing if Tez Walker stepped out of bounds on a deep route. And not even if he caught the ball, if he stepped out from 1 yard from line of scrimmage to the 50 yards when he caught it. I'm like, what are we looking at? And then you don't review the play of the game. Tim Hasselbeck was all over it on the broadcast. He was losing his mind saying, how do you review in Tez Walker doing that and you don't review this? While Elko's in the ear of the official right there saying, review it. And at the end of the day, too, it's a bad look when the defender, like anybody that has the ball on their back on the ground, to me, they have possession. Like if it was Duke on top of the wide receiver, he has possession. That's just, he called it. But instead, it was 2 Duke players and 1 UNC player. Like the math isn't math and it's Duke's ball. How do you not look at it?
Yeah, and we'll move on to that too, because we had another question about that. I'm scrolling through trying to find who asked it, but he was wondering why Coach Elko didn't challenge it. And I can't remember. I don't know if any of you guys remember. I'm trying to think back, because you do have a coach's challenge, but in college football, you have to call a timeout to get said coach's challenge. And Elko never called a timeout. And I don't know, did we have any timeouts at that point?
Yeah, we had all 3. We had
Yeah.
all 3. But the reason it's funny you said this, but I saw this being a question too, why Elko didn't call a timeout. at the end of the day, like that, it's an obvious review that the booth has to take care of. Like that is, it's booth first and foremost. And then I don't know that, like, I don't know if it was under 2 minutes or what, but the thing with Elko not burning the timeout is you need all three timeouts of the true freshman QB going down the field to counter that. And that's probably why he didn't call it. And I don't blame him for that. Keep all three of your timeouts with Grayson Loftus going back the other way. The ACC fish, I don't know if they were sleeping in Charlotte or what. I don't know what was happening. Hornets stink. They're not watching the Hornets. They just weren't watching any ball, and they dropped the ball. So I'm still furious about that.
And that's a good point about having a true freshman QB with 3 timeouts, because maybe if Riley Leonard's out there, a healthy Riley Leonard, Elko takes that timeout and he gets all up in the official's ear and just absolutely lets them have it, and they end up reviewing the play. But
So to go to your point, if Riley Leonard's playing,
It's not a game.
it's not
we're going crazy.
Well-
John scored 45 with Loftus. Loftus balled. He's scoring 60 with
Yeah.
Riley.
Well, I think Elko would have given the ref 3 timeouts and an extra one from the Virginia game to get the review if it was Riley in there.
Here's the other thing too, and I believe I'm right about this. So I'm going to preface my answer by saying I believe. I believe I'm right about this, that it is to the discretion of the replay booth. And some of those folks just are going to be hard-headed about it and only review what they want to review. And I think that's the situation. I'm pretty sure it's the situation. And that's why Elko was losing his ever-loving mind, because it should have been reviewed. There should not have been a question. He should not have had to ask the first time. They should have buzzed down from Charlotte. From Charlotte, they should have buzzed the booth. The booth should have buzzed down. Somebody should have been out in the middle of the field, and he should have been looking at the USC Oregon game on the TV screen while they were telling him, hey, that's not a catch. Instead, none of that happened, and that's why we ended up in the position we were in.
And that would have ultimately been the game too.
I think they need to just give coaches. I mean, I think it needs to be like the NFL. They need to give coaches challenge flags, and Elko pulls the red flag out of his pocket and he just tosses it on the field. Like that should happen. You shouldn't have to call a timeout to get a challenge. That's stupid. Call it the NCAA really needs to change that rule.
Hey, don't let Jordan tell Connor that, Jamie, because he'll lose his mind.
So next question, Adrian Filson. I thought this was a pretty good question, actually. He says, I know this goes against logic, but knowing that their offense, speaking of Drake May and the Tar Heels, their offense is great. Would it have been a decent idea for Jordan Moore to purposely step out of bounds at the 1 yard line on that pass on 4th and 7? That way we remain control at the end of the game and we are not at the mercy of their offense.
You can't do that, like, because you just never know. Like, could you imagine? Like, the PTSD is just in my head thinking of Deion Jackson's jump pass at the 1 yard line. If Jordan Moore could have walked in for what looked like to be the game winner, but he was trying to think of that scenario, and then we just don't get in, I would be absolutely a wreck. But I can see the idea behind it. But no, that would have been the play of the decade for Duke football. Loftus to Moore right there to beat UNC.
Yeah.
Ultimately, and I'm 100% sure, I think I texted you guys this. It felt like the same thing from last year. We gave May the football with a chance to go down the field with an opportunity where, like Jordan said earlier, that if somebody even sneezed at Tez, it was a 15-yard penalty.
So the only way, and I get where Adrian's coming from, I absolutely get it. But the only way I would have done that would be if I was down, say 2 points, and I got a Polino chip shot. Then I might tell my guy to go down and let's kick a field goal for the win with 3 seconds left. But then still, you're trusting. You never know what happens on a kick. So Matthew Jones on Facebook, and I had this question too. I had no idea where he was. And I think they may have been just riding the hot hand because Coleman was running really well. But he asked where was Jordan Waters during the OT, and I didn't know if he was hurt or Scott. Did you see anything?
He got hurt early in the first half. To be honest with you, the way they were setting up and running that same play to the left, had they set up in that play again, Jordan Waters would have scored his 13th touchdown because they were, I don't know what the devil they were running, but he basically beat the guy to the corner and just walked into the end zone as the two guys were following him both times. And I mean, I don't know. I think part of it is the fresh legs, though, because we mentioned that before. We mentioned the fact that Coleman, we thought, would get in the fourth quarter of some games, have them fresher legs, and that would be something they would use to the advantage. And he's very trustworthy, obviously, because we trust to put him the ball in his hands. But yeah, I I don't know. Maybe he did get dinged up or something, but he was out there for the next series, so I'm not sure.
All right. So Jason Rogers says his heart hurts for the players, which I think all of us do. What do teams do in situations like this? Would he wants to know would Nina King like go through proper channels and like send a like I guess a complaint to the ACC office? Not that that's going to help us, but if the ACC comes back and is like, oh, our bad, or something like that.
See Miami of 2000 and what year? I always forget the years mixed up.
14
15,
or 15?
Yeah,
15.
15. 15 because as soon as that game ended, everyone was begging the 80 at the time. His name
Kevin White.
Kevin White.
Kevin
Thank you.
White.
To send a protest into to Charlotte immediately because it was blatantly obvious that the ref just completely screwed up the ending of that game. But then, someone made a good point. Say they did, and they came out and said, "Hey, you know what? You're right. Our guys screwed up. We're going to flip the ending. Duke wins." That would open Pandora's box to
Mhm.
outcomes that have happened in years past and in future games. So, yeah, she could probably send a formal complaint. They'll probably, assess it. And I don't know if the ACC sends out customer surveys to the schools, but if I had to take a guess, there's going to be a heavily worded email sent to the ACC head of officials.
Yeah, I don't know if they like to go off Brian real quick. The one thing Duke fans maybe can have like a moral victory of if the ACC comes out with a presser on Twitter with a post saying that they missed calls or the call should have been reviewed for the interception. Like that's the closest you can get to like a win necessarily. But that'd be great to see because if they double down and say no, everything was called correctly, I will lose my mind.
Yeah, and honestly, like you said, the outcome's not going to change anything. It doesn't matter how blatant it is and stuff like that. And that is the part. That's one of the things that stinks, obviously, for the players, because some of these guys have never beaten Carolina, and it sucks beyond all measure. And knowing that those guys warriored up, played their butts off, left it all out there on Keaton Stadium, and they still couldn't get a win. Just it breaks the heart for all of us.
Yeah, to go off that real quick, Scott, I do feel bad for the super seniors, like the fourth and fifth year guys, like Dwayne Carter, not ever beating UNC, and to know that he should have won with Deion Jackson when he was a freshman. Duke should have won that game last year and this year. That's 3 wins right there, and to have 0, that hurts me for him.
Yeah, it's just a terrible way to finish a career. I know that Dwayne has moved on to UVA at this point, but he's got to be thinking about that in the back of his mind. And we love Dwayne too, so that's one of our favorites. Uh, Peter Dodge, can my money contribution to the Durham Devils Club be put towards the exit fee to allow Chapel Hill Community College to move on to a more worthy conference? He says, "Bet you those assholes won't be protected like they are in the ACC." He says, "Enough of those cheating bastards. Let's pay homage to this team. They played their hearts and souls and asses off. In the end, 11 couldn't overcome 18. He says, I remain so proud of them." And on to UVA. So another, not a real question from Peter Dodge, but just a Peter Dodge just preaching.
Hey, he's our biggest mass hole, as he calls
Yes.
himself. And Peter, by the way, Kate Rogerson of ABC 11, the sports reporter, she said the other night to me on the field that she is a tried and true mass hole. So I told her about you. So you're welcome. You've got a mass hole in Kate if you ever come across and talk with her.
Hey, let's be honest, if they ever left the conference, do you know how excited the whole freaking conference would be? you wouldn't have to listen to the whining and the complaining and the cheese and all this other BS. And in fact, here one other thing. Sorry, I'm going to go on soapbox for a minute because this, I'm feeling a little better. No pain pills in my system right now. All of you idiots wearing light blue that 2 weeks ago, I'm done with football. It's basketball season. And then you're all out there cheering like a bunch of morons. Are you freaking kidding me? You almost got beat at home by the third string quarterback of a team that should have wiped you up and down the freaking field. Sorry. But let's be honest. Guys, I mean, just frustrates the crap out of me listening to them talk out of both sides of their mouth. And then, the wine and cheese and crying and complaining and all this other bull crap. And by the way, for the record, Caleb Love doesn't go to your school anymore. So shut up about him.
Well said,
Oh,
Scott.
boy.
Well said.
I
Amen,
mean,
brother.
we've
Amen.
had more basketball references in this one episode than we have in the last 4 years. So, amen.
All right. Nathan Kogaboon. Funny story about Nathan Kogaboon. His dad was a teacher of mine in high school, so that was a really long time ago. That makes me feel very old.
63, 64.
Yeah. Does the firing of Jimbo Fisher raise concerns that they will call for Coach Elko? And is that enticing for him? Jordan, we'll let you take it since I saw you tweet about this a little earlier.
Yeah, it's just it sucks because I don't think Elko, like the whole Northwestern Michigan State thing, was just full of smoke because he was winning at Duke, and they're like, "Oh, these are openings. There's a Duke coach. Let's just tag his name." There was no real shot that's ever going to happen. But there's probably like 3 legit places where I would be worried about Elko, and that's obviously A&M because they have money out out the ass. They do. They have just a ton of money, and he was there 4 years, so he knows them. And Notre Dame, if Notre Dame for whatever reason opened up, that'd be a second one that I'm worried about. And the third one would be Penn State. If they're like, you know what, James Franklin, you cannot beat a top 10 team. With it, they just fired their offensive coordinator, so they're clearly something's not working there. Those are the 3 where I'm like, all right, I'm a little worried. But for A&M, yeah, it's something that we'll obviously keep an eye on, right? Because, like I said, he was the one thing that I will say, sorry, I am going to get on a Scott rant here real quick, is Santucci is Elko's guy. Like, he's been with Elko like 5 stops now. Maybe this is 6. I can't keep track, sorry. But he's his guy, and both were defensive coordinators under Jimbo. So maybe A&M just wants to cut that off completely because it's hard for me to imagine Elko going back to A&M and cannot bring basically the guy that he has chaperoned in college football to be his defensive coordinator. So I think that's a plus for Duke fans, but it's not like the biggest plus because at the end of the day, the biggest plus is money signs and money talks. And hopefully Duke just keeps backing the Brinks truck up as much as they can.
And it's funny that you mentioned that, Jordan, because I texted that in our group text earlier. I was like, maybe Texas A&M wants to move on from Jimbo completely, and maybe they don't want anybody that has been with him on his coaching staff or otherwise. And I think I've seen a lot of A&M fans. They're really hot and bothered for Urban Meyer right now. So like, and a lot of A&M fans are kind of not wanting Elko. They're like they've been saying that he's a great coach. I actually interacted with a guy. I think it was Texas A&M 365 or something. He has like 7,000 followers. I interacted with him some today, and he was just back and forth, just asking me about Elko and all that stuff. But I think he was to the point where just 2 years of coaching experience at Duke, they kind of want to look somewhere else other than Elko.
Well, here's the other thing that people are not thinking about. Whoever goes into Texas A&M, I don't care if it's Texas A&M, you're going to have to rebuild that program because the transfer portal is open for all players on Texas A&M. So there could be a mass exodus of players. So whoever comes in is going to have to rebuild the foundation to get them back to the prominence that Texas A&M fans and boosters think they need to get to. On the flip side of it, if I'm Mike Elko and I'm Tyler Santucci and I'm Kevin Johns, I'm going, what positions do we need to fill next year? Torian York, remember him? He was supposed to be at Duke right now. And then at the last second, he flipped to Santucci, who was at Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
So glass half full kind of guy, I see it as an opportunity to bring some more guys in from Texas A&M to boost this team even more heading into next year when we're playing some teams we weren't expected to play in a couple of years. CFSU coming to Wallace Wade.
Hey, wouldn't it be funny if like Elko doesn't go to coach at A&M, he stays at Duke, but then he raids them and like brings in all these players, which I mean it could happen, you know. So
But it's gotta be the right players. Sorry,
you're
Scott,
right,
the
right.
right players.
Let's be honest. My personal opinion, again, you take it for what it's worth. This is not anybody telling me this. This is not anything other than me personally. I believe 2 years out as the coach, he's not going to leave because his family is settled here right now. I think the fact that his oldest son, is just right up 85, 95, and the fact that the kids are in school, a junior and a freshman, and they love it here. That's my opinion. I think that's another thing. Now, it's up to Nina King and obviously President Price to find that bag of money. A&M, here's what you need to do: get you as many blonde co-eds as you can and some bag of money because Urban needs both.
Yeah. Okay, moving to the next question. Glenn Setliff. He says, I hope we can talk about more than just the refs, which in his opinion is getting old. This team put it all on the line, and he wants to give them some props. He's like the fake punt on fourth and 7 from their own 27, which we mentioned, the onside kick Brian mentioned, and forcing several field goals instead of giving up touchdowns to that offense. And then he has a actual question: has Loftus, in our opinion, jumped Beelan and a less than 100% Leonard, which we don't think Riley's going to play at all the rest of the year unless it's the bowl game, on the depth chart. So I think you ride the hot hand, to be honest. Even if Beelan's ready, I think at this point, if Loftus is the hot hand, I think you ride that. What do you guys think?
I'll fall on the sword here. I'll definitely take this one. I believe that at this point, you don't take the ball away from him. He's done everything he's supposed to do to get Duke in the position they're in. They have an opportunity, like Elko said today at the presser. 2 more wins, they're 8-4 again. Guys, we're talking about, and if Duke wins, obviously, I'm anticipating them winning. That's 4 wins from a true freshman who came in midseason, obviously, but a true freshman at this point. And nothing against Henry. I hate the fact that Henry got hurt, but it's Grayson's car right now. He has the keys, and until he either gets hurt, with Lord forbid, or something goes wrong, it's his. And he drives the Cadillac to the end of the season until we get to spring ball, and then it's up to them from there.
To piggyback off that, Scott, a case in point, I know it's different positions, but the running back room, Jalen Coleman was the 1-2 with Jordan Waters last year. Jaquez was 3. Coleman gets hurt, then it becomes Waters, Jaquez, and then now you got Coleman 3, and those two were fantastic this year for Duke, and now Jaquez is a little banged up, and so Coleman's getting back into it. But to go off your point, yeah, you ride with the hot hand once they're producing, and then when the guy comes back from injury, something happens, step right back in.
All right. Chris McCurdy kind of piggybacking off that question, but asking about next year's situation. He says, personally, with Grayson, good grief, I can't talk. Grayson Loftus, his performance yesterday, where does that leave the QB situation heading into 2024, 2025? And our sponsor, Jamie Hagler, actually also asked this as well. And he wanted to know who transfers, who stays.
Oh, Brian, you can go first.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be as transparent as I can be. Folks, the biggest thing right now is NIL. Players are getting paid for their play. They are getting rewarded. If Duke's NIL is not where it needs to be, I'm not going to put it back up, Durham Devils Club. You are going to see some players leaving. I'm being as honest as I can be. So if you got a rich uncle, a rich daddy, a rich grandpa, and you want to contribute, contribute to Duke's NIL. With that being said, if Riley comes back, we know Grayson's going to come back. You know who's coming in, Tyler Cherry. The kid's been putting up nothing but stout figures, and his videos have been off the charts. I honestly don't know, because we said it last week. Let's say everyone stays and Tyler Cherry comes in. What'd they do with Jordan Moore last year? Moved him to wide receiver. While Henry Beelan was a quarterback this year, he could be moved to another position. As crazy as this may sound, Grayson Loftus could be moved to another position. We just don't know. And Scott, help me out here. You're the guru in transfer portal and everything like that. But once we hit, I think, the end of January, is that right? Or February, we should know who is going to be on this team heading into the 2024 season.
As soon as the second semester starts.
So that would be January.
The middle of January.
Right. So there you have it. We don't know. I mean, we're in with the program, but we're not that in.
To go one step further for you, Brian, I don't think we'll know. Like, I hope, God, please, Riley. I'm saying Riley's one. That's point blank period. Riley's one in this hypothetical. For two, I think I'll go one step further. You won't know till spring ball. I think both guys are very competitive. Neither is going to pout and quit or transfer in December and look somewhere else. They're going to try and fight it out in spring ball and see where they line up. And then Tyler Cherry comes in, like you said, and he'll probably redshirt. So the battle of number 2 will be fun to watch in spring ball.
Like I texted you guys the other night, I really think Tyler Cherry is going to have to fight Grayson Loftus for the keys to the car if Riley Leonard is not the quarterback. Because we're talking at that point now 5 victories under his wing, because we obviously think he's going to win out. And we obviously think he's going to go win the bowl game too. So I'm just saying, how do you cut bait from a kid who's done so well unless the other kid comes in and is just lights freaking out?
Yeah, and in a hypothetical situation where Riley transfers or goes pro, like in that hypothetical, I don't want to see that. I mean, obviously, I want Riley back as number one. Y'all know how I feel about Riley. But in that hypothetical situation, I still think, like Scott says, I think you prefer Grayson Loftus as the number one. You don't necessarily want a true freshman starting unless he is just absolutely just legit and just the next coming of I don't know, Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning thing.
So next kind of comment here.
Omaha.
Yeah. Next kind of comment here is from Maria Dalmalin, mother of Nikki.
Dalmalin, you're sounding like me.
Dalmalin. I don't know why I said Dalmalin. God, I'm terrible tonight. I don't know what's going on. Am I drunk? I don't know. Maybe. She says the UNC students were beyond rude. We couldn't believe it. She said their mothers must be so proud. And she said, I get that the away team gets the crappy seats, but their jumbotrons were ancient. She says UNC can't pay for some legit viewing. Terrible. The fan experience at Wallace Wade is supreme, and it is always immaculate. And I will say, Kenan Stadium, the seats were okay. You know, the backs with the seats, and I actually had plenty of room. Like being 6'4", I had plenty of room for my legs in there, which was nice. But the rest of Kenan is a crap hole. Like that place is a dump. Like I almost broke my ankle out on the concourse. Like legit concourse 1, Jamie 0.
Yeah, Kenan Stadium 1.
Yeah. And their video boards, what did they pay? Like $20 for them things? Like our video board is way better at Wallace Wade. Like way better.
They give all that money to Drake May.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was hard. I mean, it's kind of hard in stadium to keep up with the downs and keep up with the timeouts because you can't even see the freaking video board.
Well, yeah, the blue zone was full when the game started, and then at halftime it was half empty. So it was almost like a regular Carolina game.
And Maria said she has one more thing to add, and it should have been first. She said, all our boys fought and battled to the very end, and she could not be prouder. All right, so we'll move on to Twitter now.
Wait. If we're being completely transparent and honest, the weather was a little cold on Saturday night, and I drove in with the guys. I drove my truck, and it was like, all right, if it gets out of hand, Brian, you just say the word. We'll walk back to the truck. Let's be honest, guys. The first quarter was
10-0, and the text comes across. Is it time to go yet? And I'm laughing my behind off at home, thinking about this the whole time. Like that would probably been me if I'd have been there.
In
yeah.
our defense too, UNC was driving, and it looked like they were going to go up 17-0.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
Right.
the defense was stopping them to only field goals, and it was like, all right, we'll wait a little bit longer. And I hate to sound that way, but it's just the everything came off slow to begin with. The team did, and then they just kept getting better and better and better. And glad we stayed, but yeah, first quarter we're like, man, this might be a short night.
All right, moving on to Twitter. Here we come with a question that I thought was going to be for Josh, but he's not with us tonight. Somewhere in the woods, he walked off at Chapel Hill. We have no idea where he is. We have no idea. At the Duke of Cupa. He says, y'all are religious folks, which is true. I've been in church all my life. So does God hate Duke because we are the Blue Devils? I would say no. I would say maybe if we were the Red Devils, he might hate us more. I'm not sure.
God punished us from 1995 to 2007. And then, like the Israelites coming out of Egypt with David Cutcliffe, we went back to not the Garden of Good and Evil. God, I'm butchering Bible stories. we went back to the land of milk and honey, and we enjoyed that for a few years. And then we went right back to the dark ages. And now the new prophet, Mike Elko, has brought us out of exile. So,
He's parted the Red Sea for us.
yeah.
Is what you're trying to say, Brian? Mike Elko has parted the Red Sea, preferably.
Hey, I narrated the Bible in 30 seconds. There you go, folks.
And shout out to at Duke Defender who asked a similar question. He says, "Why does God give us Duke fans his hardest battles?"
I think because I'll say this. I believe it was because we are true fans. I think a Duke fan can put up with the crap that we have to put up with from all this junk because we are true fans. We sit out there and we go through it all, and it doesn't phase us. And I think that's one of the signs of being a real true fan. Had this happened in any other ACC school, they'd have give up, gone home, tossed rocks, kicked whatever. They'd have give up on it. But Duke fans, it's almost like we enjoy it to a point because it happens all the freaking time. And it's not funny, but I think it makes us stronger as a fan. I think it makes us love the team more, having to put up with some of the crap we have to put up with. And I think also too, the parents, a lot of the parents have commented and stuff like that about the players. I think that's the way we are. I think that's why we are the way we are. I think it's one of the things as fans, because we are fans, number one, obviously. But the closer that we've gotten to the program, to the players, to the families, and all that other stuff, man, we want them to win just as much as they do. They're the ones that go out there every day and practice. They're the ones that put their life, I won't say life on the line, but they work their behinds off to get where they are. And when they lose, we feel it as a fan base anyway, but we almost feel it from their level. And that may sound cliche, it may sound stupid, but I think that's where we're at now. I think as we're getting closer and things are going on, and Jordan mentioned super seniors earlier. We've been around a bunch of these guys for 5 and 6 years, and we are close, I guess is the word. I don't know how to put it any other way without me fumbling over my mouth for 5 minutes. So I think that's part of the thing. All of us, all the people now that are a part of the group here that are starting to get in this and starting to care. And I said this a couple weeks ago. We're losing games and things are not going right. And this is the most I've ever seen a Duke football fan base ever complain. Thank God. Because used to, we couldn't get more than 5 people to sit in the stands for more than 30 minutes without wussing out and going home because it was 7-0 at the end of the first quarter. So, yes, it sucks that we have to go through some of the trials and tribulations, but we're finally starting to get to the top of the roller coaster ride where it just becomes fun and we ride down that hill and have a great rest of the season.
Scott just called Brian out because Brian was one of the fans that left after 7-0.
After 20 years of going through it, yeah, sorry, I'm guilty.
All right, at Blade for Duke says he saw a post from a UNC fan that the offensive lineman is allowed more than 3 yards down the field if he is engaged with a defender. He said rule book I saw online for 2023 does not mention that exception, and he would love some clarification. First of all, that UNC fan is full of shit. Sorry, YouTube. Sorry, YouTube. We might have to rate
Edit.
this. We might have to rest it. Beat me out, Justin. Beep that out. But anyways, he's full of it because that dude was in the end zone by himself. Like he wasn't engaged with anybody.
Yeah, to go off that, I was in the mud, deep in the mud on Twitter. If you couldn't tell, on Saturday night, I was just letting it fly. I didn't care who was in the shot, but they were doing screenshots. UNC fans have the screenshots, like the millisecond that is out of Drake May's hands. The offensive line's at the goal line, which in college is 3 yards. You get 3 yards. So technically, on the screenshot, they are correct. But in reality, that's not what happened. In reality, the ball's in the air. The lineman keeps going down the field to where he's 7 yards outside of where he should have been, and that's why he ducks, because he got caught. And the fact that it was not called was mind-blowing to me because he's just so out in the open. I mean, he looks like a well on land. Like he's like, I should not be here. What is happening? He looks like a beached well in the end zone, and it doesn't get called. And I'm yelling at the TV, and now you got me worked up again, Jamie. So thanks for the question.
All right. At LA Dodgers all day says, how much do we have to pay to get the same officiating favors? He wants it year after year too. Like we don't want it just 1 year. We want it every year.
Take the high road.
We're just trying to see if we got the budget for that. Like, do we have the budget?
Do you want good officiating, or do you want the players to leave?
Yeah.
Donate to the Durham Devils Club.
That's right.
I wasn't ready.
Okay, so this is an interesting question. At Seth Bishop, he wants to know, is there something to Elko losing in close games? He says the Notre Dame game, UNC both years, Georgia Tech game last year, and he also mentions the prevent defense, which we talked about earlier, which not really a prevent defense like Jordan had mentioned earlier. But what do y'all think about the close game losses?
And we've lost 4 games this year to 4 ranked teams.
He's a win away from 10th all time in wins in Duke football history. And he's been here for almost 2 years.
He's not finished 2 years yet. I mean, that's insanity.
But
I mean, and he can't get out there and play for them. I mean, he's making all the right calls to put us in the position to win.
right. And ironically enough, while you're talking about calls that switched games, the Georgia Tech game, they called Duke for OPI on John Tavis Robertson, and it was not offensive pass interference because he was behind the line of scrimmage. And Duke would have won that game because Duke would have scored a touchdown there because we had it first and goal at the 1. But I digress on that point. But also, if you want to look at the losses, they are tight losses. It's kind of like Shire right now with Duke basketball. At the end of the day, it's a first-year head coach, basically. I know he's in year 2, but you're still figuring out the kinks of like certain things in certain situations. The fact Duke's even in some of these games, like Cutcliffe was a professional. Duke's tied 0-0, 3-3 against a ranked team at the end of the first quarter. Then Duke got blown out second, third, and fourth. Elko had Duke 1 play away from the 11th best team in the country and was leading 3 quarters at the number 4 best team in the country in Tallahassee. So like, he's there. It's just he's got to get his guys eventually too.
The only 2 losses I can think of to where Duke, in my opinion, should not have won the game at the end of it, the Kansas game and the Louisville game. I can't think of any other game to where it was like they were the better team and they should have won.
1 from each season. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even in Coach Elko's rookie season, I mean, he had us just a matter of points away from the ACC championship game.
16.
Yeah. At TS Lester _ he's just wanted to note something and kind of curious of our opinion. He's been vocal since Saturday night and saying when you got 25 seconds left and one timeout, I guess before halftime, why not take a deep shot? And he'd want our thoughts on that. Like, why did we just kind of run the clock out instead of taking our shot? I guess.
Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Again, a lot happened Saturday night. Wasn't Grayson kind of still struggling to get going and everything? It was really the second half that he really got things rolling.
Right.
And Duke was going to get the ball to start the second half. So why not be down 2 points at the half instead of possibly throwing a pick six to where now you're down, what, 8, 9?
9.
You know?
And then even if you don't throw a pick six there, I'm not sure what Carolina's timeout situation was at that time. I can't remember. But if you throw an interception there and you give the ball to Drake May with 20 seconds left, I mean,
Tez Walker.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because he's pulling a rabbit out of the freaking hat no matter what he's doing.
It's not out of the hat that he's pulling it, but yes.
Trying to keep it PG.
Let's see. So many questions at Fish Fry 02. He has so many questions and what ifs about last night. He's like, but we must move on to UVA. So here we go. Our first question about UVA.
Good, because I was about to call the mailbag.
What's the chances the team comes out pissed and fired up and ready to prove a point and just absolutely dominates UVA on Saturday?
Yeah. Well, we all saw what happened last year with UVA, and I don't think UVA is going to do what they did last year before the game at Wallace Wade. And for those of you who don't know, the kickers were warming up, and UVA decided to lock arms, walk the entire length of the field, and they walked straight through the kickers. You don't do that with a team, especially a team with a chip on their shoulders. I believe Coach Elko said it tonight. I was watching a little bit of his show, and I think they had it tonight because Duke basketball is playing tomorrow night against Michigan State. That's like 10 references to basketball. This will never happen again, folks. We promise. But he said, and I think a fan that was there asked him, like, how do you mentally get past this game and on to the next one? And he basically said, we have taught these guys, you're going to take your day, you're going to get it out of your system, and then you're going to be ready for the next game. So again, we're recording on a Monday night. I'm sure that they came together today. Cool. Everyone good. We're on to UVA. This is what we need to do. One game at a time. So yeah, that UNC game stung for fans. It definitely stung for the players. I was on the field when they were walking to the locker room. It sucks, plain and simple. But how do you make it up? You kick the next team's tail. You get the win. Heading into Thanksgiving weekend to hopefully get 8 wins, and then go down to the land of the creamy condiments, the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Hopefully.
To go off that real quick, Brian. Last year, Duke, like we talked about, felt like they were hosed against UNC and felt like that one got away. How do you come back? Duke went on the road, beat Miami 45-21 the next game. So, like, this team has proven that they can do that.
And I'm just wondering how much time this week does Coach Elko spend making his Father's Day wish list for Tony Elliott?
You mean Phony Elliott? Elliott.
Yeah. At CB Jones 725, kind of a comment. I thought this was good. We don't really have to speak on it, but I wanted to read it. I thought it was good. He's like you guys, I've been a huge Duke fan since the 1980s. I think 2023 is the best team I have seen. He said 1989, 1994, and 2013 will end up with maybe a better record and / accolades, but they didn't have the schedule or the injuries this team has faced. He said, I put this team over each of them. And he says, am I crazy? He's proud of the guys. And one more question. This will be it for the questions. Brian's
Sorry, I've had a long weekend. I'm still catching up from that UNC game Saturday night.
So at Drew Chesh, I thought this was a good question too, because we've been asking it all year. In brief moments in the Chapel Hill College game, the offense involved Nicky as an intermediate passing target. Any idea why that's so sporadic and rarely used option in Johns' offense? And we've literally talked about it all year, and we can't figure out, because Nicky seems to be a weapon when he's used. Not only can he block, he can catch, and he's physical and fast for a tight end, you would think you'd want to use him a little more.
I feel the same way about Jeremiah when he's in the game. I'm not 100% sure. I know that I picked up on this, and this is not me by any means trying to be mean, but I noticed a lot of times during practice when they were lining up in positions, and they do this a lot during games, they put the tight end as far right as they can. And it's almost like they want everybody else in the middle to do everything, and the tight end's just out there running a seam route or whatever. And I've never seen that before. I've never seen a tight end line up the way they do for a lot of times, and it's always taking the defender out there. So I don't know, maybe that's just they're trying to get the defender or whatever open. But yeah, you're right. When they do throw the ball to the big fella, I mean, he catches it. Jeremiah, same deal. So I would love to see, and we really didn't do that 2 years ago. We've had many good tight ends. I mean, Noah Gray, prime example. He's an NFL player. He didn't get used as well as he could have before this group came in.
Hour and 15 minutes. I finally got him. Well, look, that was another huge mailbag segment. Thank you to each and every one of you who sent in your questions. We look forward to getting more mailbag questions for next week's UVA reaction episode as we look ahead to Pitt. But we got to keep this train rolling. Let's go to our newest segment, one that we've all enjoyed in the last year and a half, and that is This Week in Blue Devil History. Scott, what do you have for us this time? You're muted. Take two. You're still muted.
I know.
Okay, all right, just making sure.
This is the one time every time that I mute myself to make sure I'm in order and ready to go, and trying to get to another screen, and it always happens, and this screws me up every stinking time.
All right.
So,
All right, take two. Scott, what do you have for us this week?
all right. So for this week in Duke football history, sorry, because I have messed myself up anyway before we got to this point. We're going to go back to November 18th, 2017. Duke compiled 500 yards of total offense with 319 on the ground to defeat the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets 43-20. Daniel Jones was 18 of 26 with 177 yards and 2 TD passes and 15 rushes for 91 yards and 1 touchdown. Britton Brown had 14 rushes for 116 yards and 1 touchdown. Jonathan Lloyd had 5 catches for 57. Sean Wilson had 3 receptions for 36 yards and 2 touchdowns. Joe Giles Harris led the team with 14 tackles, and Marquise Waters had 9 total tackles. Big Victor Dimukeji had the 1 interception and returned it 26 yards. The game was tied 20-20 at halftime, and Duke took over in the second half with 10 points in the third and 13 in the fourth. This was Duke's 5th win of the season and moved them one step further to bowl eligibility, where they would play the Northern Illinois in the Quick Lane Bowl that season. And that was This Week in Duke football history, brought to you by Bull City Sheet Metal. No matter what your duck needs, if your air goes through it, they make it. Give them a call today at 919-354-0993 or visit bullcitysheetmetal.com.
Jamie, you didn't hold your hand up like Josh usually does. It was on your screen. Nope, it's already. Yep, that's what you should have done. I was trying to get you to it. So, yeah, another This Week in Blue Devil history. Always good to go back in time and relive some of the great moments in Duke football history. But we're going to keep rolling. Usually this is the part where Josh segues me into the tail of the tape. But obviously Josh is finding himself in the woods again. We hope he's back next week. If not, well, who knows? We'll maybe have Jordan back or Freddie Hodges of the Duke Report. But as I stated earlier, we got to look ahead. We're going to look ahead now to the UVA Cavaliers, who unfortunately are not doing as well as many thought they would do. Well, none of us are really that, sad that they're going through what they're going through. But anyway, let's get right into it. Tail of the tape for the Virginia Cavaliers. Last year, Virginia went 3-7 and did not make it to a bowl game. They canceled their last 2 games due to that unfortunate shooting on campus. Now, UVA is currently 2-8 overall now and 1-6 in the ACC. And last week, the Cavaliers were defeated by Louisville 31-24 in that epic Thursday night game. Head coach Tony Elliott is in his second year of being the head coach of the Cavaliers. And before coming to Virginia, Elliott was the offensive coordinator at State from 2015 to 2021. And he had other assistant coaching stints at Furman and South Carolina State, I should say. To date, Elliott has a head coaching record of 5-15. Overall, this is the 75th matchup between Duke and Virginia, with Virginia leading the series matchup on Duke 40-34. The first ever meeting between Duke and Virginia took place all the way back on November 27th, 1890, on Thanksgiving Day in Richmond, where UVA defeated Duke 10-4. It was Duke's only game that year. Now, since 1963, the two teams have played every year, but this year's matchup will be the last until 2025 due to the new ACC scheduling format. And we all remember, last year Duke finally broke Virginia's 7-game winning streak, defeating the Cavaliers 38-17. The last time Duke won back-to-back games against Virginia was when Duke defeated UVA 3 times in a row from 2012 to 2014. And Mike Elko is all-time 2-0 against Virginia. One as a defensive coordinator, and of course, last year's game. And now it's time for the Did You Know? Orange and blue were adopted as University of Virginia's official athletic colors at a mass student meeting in 1888. UVA's athletic teams had previously worn silver, gray, and cardinal red, but those colors did not stand out on muddy football fields, prompting a student movement to change them immediately. One of the students who attended the mass meeting was Alan Potts, a multi-sport star athlete who played on Virginia's first football team in 1888. Potts showed up at the meeting after football practice wearing a navy blue and orange scarf that he had acquired during a summer boating expedition at Oxford University. After one of Potts' fellow students pulled the scarf off Potts' neck, he waved it to the crowd and yelled, "How will this do?" Orange and blue were chosen as the official school athletic colors without opposition, and as they say, the rest is history. And that was the tale of the tape for the Virginia Cavaliers. So 5-15 start for Tony Elliott, not what anyone expected. On the flip side, you've got Mike Elko, who has started out with a bang with Duke. So kudos, Nina King. You made the right hire. So with that being said, before we get into predictions, again, we went a lot into the UNC game. We haven't really talked about Virginia. So, guys, I'm going to open the floor really quickly. Any thoughts on this Virginia game as we head up to Scott Stadium, in Charlottesville this weekend for the 3 o'clock kickoff on the CW for the first time?
I will say, it looked like earlier in the year that it would just be like Duke would go in there and just absolutely lay waste to them. But ever since UVA beat Carolina and Keenan, they've played a lot better. And then I was watching that game. It was Thursday night, correct?
Yep, Thursday night against Louisville.
Thursday night, and they had Louisville beat at Louisville. Credit to Louisville for coming back in that game and finishing off a win, because that was a game that UVA very easily could have won. So I mean, I'm looking at this game as a game that's going to be a tough game, and UVA's playing well.
Yeah, they are playing well right now. Calandria has come out of nowhere as a true freshman, 1,437 yards. Now his touchdowns and interceptions, 8 and 8, are not so great. But the kid, he's got it. He's got that factor. He's got the little 17-year-old boy look on his face, but he is a stone cold killer. I mean, the kid is unbelievable. He was out there going crazy, making great plays. And had it not been for Louisville finally waking up the other night, they possibly would have lost that game.
Yeah, they're 2-8, and the record you'd think Duke should. I mean, Duke's a 4-point favorite, and people were probably looking at that like that's a trap line. That doesn't make sense. That's probably accurate because you don't know what type of Virginia team you're getting. You get the one they lost to Georgia Tech, 41-17. I think that was the Georgia Tech, or you can get where they almost beat Louisville, and they should have beat NC State earlier this year. Calandria is the most electric person. I've watched so much Virginia football. It's sickening, but I just love bad football, so I can't turn away. But the kid had a 2-point conversion they converted on at the 18-yard line because they had a 15-yard penalty. So they had to do a 2-point conversion with 18, got it. Helmet came off, took his helmet off, and then NC State went down the field, kicked the game-winning field goal. That's how they lost. He can spin it, and I've said it on the Big J and Little J show. I'll say it on here too. If anybody remembers Brendan Kennett against Pitt, 58-55, he had 4 touchdowns and 4 picks. That's literally what you're going to see with Anthony Calandria when Duke plays him. He's going to have the throw, and you're like, wow, this kid can really spin it. And then he's going to throw in triple coverage. Like, this kid's awful. But that's why he's the best. It's a roller coaster, and it's going to be exciting to watch.
Any chance they break out Tony Blunderbuss, as I call him, Tony Muskett?
Is he hurt? I don't know if he's hurt.
I think he's been hurt.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he is currently, because Calandria, it gives them the best chance, in my opinion.
Yeah, I saw Blunderbuss against UNC. He looked good. I mean, obviously led him to a victory, but I was just curious. A couple of notes as far as the team overall. Paris Jones, their leading running back, which their running attack isn't the greatest. He will not be in the game. He had that unfortunate back injury against Louisville, had to have spine surgery. He will not be playing. UVA as a team averages only 23 points a game. That's 96th in the country. That's not going to cut it. Hence, probably why they're 2-8. Their defense gives up 32 points a game, 114th in the country. So something to think about. So to me, it sounds like the running game is not going to be where it needs to be. Does Virginia just air the ball out?
They've still got some big boys,
right,
that can catch the football.
They'll for sure air it out because Malik Washington's unbelievable. Duke played him last year when he was at Northwestern, and the guy he just puts up dumb numbers. I mean, I think he's had at least 5 games over 100 yards, and he had over 100. I think he had like 140 or something at Louisville, and Duke couldn't do anything against Louisville.
1,200 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns, and there's still 2 games left in the season. So, yeah, he's going to be one to watch. And Kobe Pace, he's the other running back that's complimented Paris Jones. It could be his time to shine, seeing as Paris is not going to be on the field at all. So, well, with that being said, it is now time to head into our predictions for this weekend's game. But before I do, Scott raises – no, what you got, Scott? Come on.
No, I mean, I was going to have you go ahead and give the predictions from last week winners, but you were probably getting ready to do that.
I got you, man. I got you. Again, great minds think alike. We were on the same page with the Durham Devils Club earlier. We're on the same page with the predictions. So we have, I believe, 3 brand new winners this season, guys. I don't think I've called these folks names ever. On Twitter, this is a good one. We have Tony Parker French. He predicted UNC to win 43-27, so he's pretty close to UNC's score. On Facebook, Josh Evans predicted UNC to win 38-21. I believe he might have won last year. I don't know. Name sounds familiar. And then on Instagram, Mariah Warren predicted UNC to win 34-21. So Scott will be reaching out to the 3 of you to get your information so you can get a free Section 17 shirt sent your way. So now, fellas, it's time. We're going to give our predictions for this weekend's game up in Charlottesville. 3 o'clock kickoff on the CW. Now, Jordan alluded to it earlier. I had the line at 3.5, but I guess it's gone up a half a point, Jordan. So now it's at 4 points.
Yeah, it might be either one, just depending where you're looking.
All right, we'll say 3.5 to 4. So that's a lot closer than what many people probably would have thought a couple of weeks ago. Over under is 44 points. Okay. Over under is 48.5 points. So
it's gone down to 47.5.
Oh, really? Okay. So, man, I tell you what, you got to watch it because Vegas, they'll creep up on you with these lines. So, well, like I say, I'll go first since I'm already talking. So this is going to be another one of those games where Duke gets back in form. They're going to win their 7th game. I have no doubt. I do think the score is going to be closer than what most folks are going to think, but it's not going to reflect the game itself. I've got Duke winning 31-24, so it will be over. But I do think it's going to be a day. I think Jordan Waters is going to creep closer to that single-season rushing touchdown record. I think Grayson's going to throw a couple touchdowns. I just think it's going to be one of those games to fix what not was broken at UNC, but some things that they could have gotten better at as they head into the last game of the year against Pitt. Now, as far as jersey combo, I'm just going to say it. Virginia's like the Oregon Ducks of the ACC. They have so many different combinations, which I love, don't get me wrong, but I have no earthly idea what Duke's going to wear. So I went back in time for the last 5 games that Virginia wore. They went blue, orange, white in 21. They went white, blue, white in 20. They went white, orange, white in 19. They went white, blue, white in 17. And they went blue, blue, white in 15. All games in Scott Stadium. Duke, for the majority of those games, has gone blue, white, blue, which is not something you typically see them rock that. Well, I mean, it's their traditional away colors. So I think they're just going to keep it as tradition. They're going to go blue, white, blue. They're going to have that big white D on the helmet, and they're going to go away with a victory to get their 7th win of the season, edging closer, hopefully, to Charlotte in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Who is next? Anyone? There we go.
I'll go next. I think I can see the path that you're talking about. It would be nice with Malik Washington being the baller that he is if Miles Jones could be healthy and we can get Miles Jones back, because he's missed obviously a little over a month. It seems like now it's always good to have him healthy, but I do think Duke's going to run the ball. I think it's going to be close. It's going to be a weird environment because Duke's going to come in, but I think they're honoring the 3 players from last year because this week is the year anniversary. So they have 3 numbers in the end zones for this weekend, and the game's going to be on the CW. So it's just, the CW has been weird all year, and I think it's going to continue to be weird. And yeah, I think it's going to be a grind, because the one thing that Loftus does have me as a believer. Let me get on record, but like you said, Brian, UVA can't run the ball, but they ran for over 220 yards against UNC. That's the only game they could run very well at. So is it UNC's defense that's the problem? So we're going to see when Duke plays UVA if Loftus can carry that momentum and confidence to Virginia. But I think Duke wins by going on the ground. And since you went blue, white, blue, I'll go blue, white, white with the blue ID.
What's the score for your game?
Oh, sorry. I think it's going to be 31-21.
31-21. Okay. Jamie, you click the unmute button as well. What you got?
Yeah, I'm thinking along the same lines as Jordan, actually. I think that it's going to be a tough, grinded out game. And it's going to be in the 4th quarter. I think it could be, I was thinking that along the lines, it could be something like 24-20 in the 4th quarter, and Duke scores. And that's where my score was going to be. Even after Jordan said 31-21, I was going to say 31-20 Duke. I just think it's going to be a tough game, but I think Grayson will continue to show us his growth. But I agree with Jordan. I think we try to run the football as always, which is our strength, and it's been our strength all year. Even when Raleigh was in, that's what we did. We ran the football. As far as jersey combos, we're just gonna straight up steal Brian's, because that's what I was thinking too. Blue, white, blue, white D.
Large or small?
Large.
There we go. Scott, go ahead and finish up predictions for us, bud.
All right. So for those of you that are going to be there, we are actually going to be there. We're going to drive up Saturday morning, hang out. We're going to hook up with the hard hats and tailgate. So we'll get that information out there later on in the week once we get that settled with the hard hats. Looking forward to. Heard it's a beautiful place, beautiful stadium, and honestly, I am the big softy of the group. So if they're honoring the 3 guys, that definitely will be something that'll touch me, because I'm all for that stuff. I mean, I'll probably bawl just like anyone else will, because that stuff just does it for me, and I don't know why. It's just what I am. I'm a big teddy bear. What can I say? All right, so as far as uniforms, guys, I see white. I see white. I think they're going to come blue, blue, blue. That's what I hope for, but they'll probably do something different. I see white. I'm going to go blue, though, with the big white D on the hat. Something different. And then for the score, I'm going to Bob Barker, 30-21, because I think we're going to see the Todd father's leg a couple times, extra just to make Josh real happy if he ever comes out of the woods there. I'm pretty sure that some axe murderer over in Chapel Hill has wrapped him up somewhere and has him hiding deep in Orange County, over there close to where where they filmed Kiss the Girls
Yes,
back in the day.
with
that
Morgan
may be-
Freeman.
That's right. And Ashley Judd. Whew. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I got.
We did not get Josh's predictions because, again, we thought he was going to be on here tonight, but he's still trying to find his way out of the woods. Josh, we kid. We love you, buddy.
So it doesn't really matter what he says.
Oh, all right, Rock. In all seriousness, Josh is at a pastor's retreat that he forgot that he had today, and wherever it is, there is no cell phone reception. He thought that they were going to have Wi-Fi, but obviously he's not on here, so I guess they didn't. It's old school. They might be in Deliverance, Georgia, for all we know. So he'll be back next week. He'll actually be at the game with us Saturday. So give him a little grief if you see him and you watch or listen to this episode. Speaking of which, if you are listening and you are watching and you have yet to give us a 5-star review, please pause what you're listening to, watching, give us a 5-star review if we've earned it. If we've not, just ignore what I'm saying right now. If you're on YouTube, please be sure to like the episode, subscribe to Duke Football Talk, and if you want to leave a comment, leave a comment. We love to interact with all the fans that leave us comments. Jordan, you've mentioned it a couple of times, but just as a reminder, give everyone a background as far as the Big J and Little J podcast before we sign off.
Yeah, so Big J and Little J show, we obviously do cover football as well, just a little different spin on it, more in the details, I guess, like blabbing is what we do. But now with basketball season started, we are crossing over into basketball as well. So we had the preview of the Arizona game. We'll probably record again after the Michigan State game and recap those. So busy time of the year, doing 2 sports, but best time of the year, holiday season. So yeah, I appreciate you giving Big J and Little J show a shout out.
Well, and Jordan's repaying the favor. If you listened to last week's episode, I came on with like 2 minutes to spare to try to give my thoughts on all things Duke football. So we give, we take, we help each other out. But yeah, we'll be back next week for the final regular season episode. Well, second to last, because we'll have a reaction episode to the Pitt game. We're going to have an interview. We didn't have one this week because of all the mailbags. Again, thank you for all the questions. Scott's excited. I'm not going to say who it is. You're just going to have to tune in and watch and listen. But we've got another great personality lined up to talk all things Pitt and ACC. But again, that'll do it for us. Another episode in the books. We really appreciate you listening and watching. We hope to see as many of you as possible in Scott Stadium in Charlottesville. If not, we'll see you next weekend at Wallace Wade for the final game of the year against the Pitt Panthers. But for Jamie Holt, for Scott Medlin, for Jordan Mann of the Big J and Little J podcast, for the roaming Josh Cox in the woods and producer Justin Sykes, I'm Brian Kennedy, and this has been another episode of the Duke Football Talk Section 17 podcast.
Now turn the music up.